Jon McGlocklin is a basketball legend, an NBA champion, an incredible broadcaster for the Milwaukee Bucks. He has a lot to toot his horn about. Instead, he's a humble man, and his life is all about love and service. So we are delighted to have him on My Faith with Homer and Pip. With a Homer who had the idea, along with the Holy Spirit. I'm Tommy Pippins. Our producer is Brent Young. We're so thankful for him. And Homer, you tee it up because the legacy of Jon McGlocklin goes far beyond the round ball.
This one is easy. It's always for asking people how do they want to start the story of their faith. But for those of us that know Jon, I can always ask, oh, how do you decide how public to be with your faith, and how is that transpired? But that'll come up later. It is no different with you. Where do you choose to start the story of your faith?
Well, thanks, Homer. I love being on with you guys. We have three old guys with a lot of history and a lot of interest in the sport that we've talked about, basketball, but more importantly, the following of Jesus Christ, who we obviously fall at the foot of the cross, all three of us. I'll go back to this, Homer. I was actually baptized in my little hometown of Franklin, Indiana, which is a town about 20 miles south of Indianapolis. And at that time, it was about 9,000 people. Today, it's much bigger. And it was much like the story of the movie Hoosiers. A little bit bigger town than that, but that was pretty much my background and my basketball background. And but I was baptized when I was 10 years old in the Baptist church there. And I'm not really sure I knew, what I was doing. I was influenced by some friends. But as I look back, that's meant so much to me. And when I do return to Franklin periodically, my hometown, I drive by the Baptist church, and I've actually gone in to see where I was baptized. And then, time went on. I always felt a connection to God through Jesus, but I never really activated it in my life, even after the baptism. But I had this sense my whole life. But I really came to faith in 1979. It's after I retired as a player, and I had been, and I was announcing, and we were getting ready to start a business with Sal Bando, the baseball player, and a great one, and a wonderful man, and a very close friend. And a series of things had occurred. A Christian friend of mine here in town was trying to get me to come to different Christian activities. And I just rejected. I wasn't interested in going. And then over a 3-day period in 79, a series of things happened. And Sal and I had become friends. I'd asked him to get involved with the MAACC Fund, and he went on some MAACC Fund events as appearances with me. And we were coming back from one in Racine, and we stopped and picked his car up in a parking lot, and Sal had given me his testimony, and it was very impressive. Then he gave me a book to read called His Stubborn Love, about a woman whose father was a pastor. She had never accepted Jesus until the third rejection, when she finally hit her knees and truly accepted Jesus. And so I took the book. That was one day. The next day, I went to a pharmacy near a Kohl's then grocery store near Southridge, where I lived in that area. And I had a little cheap sports car, but I loved it because, players didn't make any money in those days, as you guys know. And I'd parked it way out in the parking lot. There were no cars around me at the time. I went in, picked up what I had to get, came back, walked out to my car, pretty far from Kohl's grocery store, which was next to the pharmacy. As I approached my car, a woman behind me said, "Excuse me, are you Jon McGlocklin? I turned around. It was a fairly young woman, I would guess mid-20s, 30. She had 2 bags of groceries. And now remember, I'm at least 75 yards from the grocery store. No cars around me. She's got 2 bags of groceries 10 feet behind me and asked me this question. After I said, yes, I am. She said, are you a Christian? And I went, yeah, well, yeah, I guess. Hadn't really thought about it. She said, well, my husband and I are, and we're praying for you. I got in my car, drove out on 76th Street, turned south, looked back. I did not see her. It's a little hard to believe, but I will tell you it happened exactly that way. So then I leave after that night. I go to Denver. I do a game for CBS. I get on the plane after the game. I go to Portland to meet up with the Milwaukee Bucks. We were in a large hotel that was called Jansen Beach Hotel in Portland. It was spread out. I had a long road trip. I had a young man, a bellman, bring my bags up, which I never, ever did. But I had too many to carry. I went on up to the room. It's 2 a.m. I open the door, walk in. I go over after I put one bag down, turn on television. I hit power. On comes Jack Van Imp of the Jack Van Imp Crusade, talking about accepting Jesus as your savior. I'm standing in front of the TV with my mouth open. The bellman knocks, pushes the door open, comes in. He goes, he's a young man. He says, excuse me, sir, may I ask you what you're watching? I said, I don't know. This guy's talking about accepting Jesus at a crusade. He goes, are you a Christian? Second time, 2 days, first times in my life. I'm like, I do my intellectual thing. And I, well, yeah, I guess. He goes, well, I am. And it is the most wonderful thing in my life. And since I've accepted Christ, all of my family has, all of my friends have, and may I pray for you? And I go, oh, whoa, no, I'm not really comfortable with that. So we stood there and talked for a moment. And then a calm came over me and I said, yes, would you pray for me? Put his hand on my shoulder, said a prayer of acceptance, and walked out of my room. I went to my knees and I asked the Lord, I don't know what's going on, but I'm not real bright, but I'm not that dumb. Something's happening. And I accepted Jesus that night and have read the Bible every day since then, other than when I've been in the hospital for surgeries and things. And my life changed that night. And then the Billy Graham Crusade came into town shortly after that. And Stuart Briscoe of Elmbrook Church, who I got to know and was doing some Bible study with because he offered me up to the Billy Graham Crusade. And I gave my first testimony at the Billy Graham Crusade, which is interesting because you only have 3 minutes. Now, even a the and an and is important. And it was impressive. But I'm going to tell you one other story about that. It was at the Old County Stadium. I go down there and I go up in one of the old locker rooms upstairs, and people are there. Terry Meeuwsen was on that night, former Miss America, Miss Wisconsin, worked at TMJ for many years, and a big MAACC Fund lady. And they told me, well, John, we want you to go over behind these curtains and get makeup put on. And I go, well, I do Bucks games. I don't wear makeup. No, would you please go because the lights are so bright, you're going to shine. So I go behind these curtains and there's 2 barber chairs. I sit in one, they put a sheet over me, start to do my pancake. To the right in the other chair, in walks Billy Graham, and he sits down in the chair 2 feet away from me. Now, guys, I want to tell you, it's the first time in my life I felt like an angel of God had walked into the room. I was in awe. He sat down, introduced himself, said, John, thanks for doing this. And the thing that struck me the most in our conversation of about 5 minutes was his humanity. He talked about being concerned about his grandkids and his children and the world. Wow, what would he say today about the world? And we had a great conversation for just a moment. So that's kind of a sidebar story to when I really came to faith, guys. And I want to say this, have I faltered since? Well, we all do every day, I think. And have I faltered bigger than that? I have. And I think what people have to do is not look at you two or me or anyone else that's a Christian, even Billy Graham, and say, if they falter, see, Jesus isn't real. See, no, don't look at us when we fail. Look at Jesus. Always watch Jesus. In Matthew 14, there's a story about the disciples are in the boat, right? And they come up against a storm. Jesus isn't with them. And Jesus starts to walk out toward them on the water, and he calms the storm. And Peter looks at him and goes, "May I come out to you?" And Jesus beckons him. Peter gets out of the boat, walking on the water, looking at Jesus. And the minute he looked around at the waves and the wind and the storm that Jesus had just calmed, he started to sink into the water. So what I took from that, the 15th time I read it, because the Bible always continues to open up, as you know, is that keep your eyes on Jesus every day. And that's what we've tried to do. And even doing that, you can fail, but he'll forgive you.
Why the Bible? You have these things occur. Everybody's faith is different. Somehow that became and is a huge part of your faith. It has different levels for different people. Clearly very high for you. How did that happen? And did it happen immediately?
It did. This Christian friend that I mentioned earlier that had been kind of pursuing me, he said, "John, read Romans." So I picked up the Bible, read Romans. I also bought a tape. We did tapes in those days in your tape player in your car. And I listened to it as well. And that was the beginning of me wanting to read the Bible. And so what I did, I started reading it, but I also started using Bible studies. Scripture Union has wonderful Bible studies that you can follow that will take you through the Bible in a year. And I've used them since 1979. And my wife does it, and it doesn't take long every day, but that way you stay grounded in the Word.
What's at the top of the list in the Bible for you? You get only one page, one book, one verse to tell someone. What for you is at the top?
Well, there's, as you know, there's so much. I mean, you can get motivated and moved every day, no matter what you read, especially in the New Testament. You know, the Old Testament is a lot more difficult. I think it's important to use a study, a guide that will tell you what that said. And these study Bibles that they have today, the information at the bottom on what you just read is usually more on a page than the actual word. So those Bibles are a little thicker. But my favorite one is the story I just told you of Matthew 14 about keeping your eyes on Jesus, and that story of the disciples out in the boat. I've told it many times individually, and when people ask me to speak, and it's one that has resonated to me in my life.
I think everybody wonders, how do you do it in public? Who do you talk to? Who do you not talk to? What is comfortable? Explain how that has developed for you.
Homer, I've enjoyed you over the years as a friend, as a guy that beat me in basketball shooting once. No, I let him believe it.
No.
And but the other thing I like, Homer, is that you do ask questions that not everybody always asks, whether it's athletically or faith. And this is one of those. You know, I do believe in that saying of you got to walk it. And I have failed. And the problem with being a public person, when you fail, a lot of people will know it. When you succeed, people know it. People watch us. They watch public people. Even today, guys, when I go out every day, usually at lunch to grab something because I want to get out and then tie it into running some errands to the bank or whatever, people stop me every single day of my life when I go out. So they know me. And you have to be aware of what you're doing, what you're saying. And very often you have an opportunity to bring up faith. But one of the lessons I learned early, and I learned it through my wife coming to faith, because when I came home and told her what happened in Portland, she was a little cautious and standoffish about it, didn't know what it meant, didn't know how it was going to change our lives. And then a few months later, she told me that she had accepted Jesus, and she told me the story. But before that happened, we would go to Elmbrook Church. And now remember, guys, I've been in the Billy Graham's crusade, so there was great visibility. And Christians would come up to me enthusiastically. Oh, John, you know, we're glad to have you, that you followed Jesus, that you're at the church. Oh, and Pam. And then they go to her and she would freeze. She would freeze because she didn't know how to respond to them. And I would just kind of block. I'd kind of get in front of her and in between her and these wonderful people that meant well. But what I learned from that, guys, was as a Christian, don't come on too strong that you blow people away. Take your time, feel the situation. If there's an opportunity to present your faith in some manner, then do it. If not, don't, or lay a little seed. I learned it through all the years of speaking, and each of you have done a lot of speaking as well. But I was asked to do all kinds of things that I've been to over the years. After I became a Christian, many of them were not Christian activities or Christian people, like at a church or a church group or a men's group that asked me to speak. It might be at a sports banquet. But what I learned was you can drop a hint and not put it in a place where it wasn't appropriate, like at a sports banquet. But you can say, well, you know, God brought me to this opportunity, and God has given me this ability to do this or that as an athlete, or I've always believed that God has led me to and through the MAACC Fund. So if you can just say something like that, even in a situation that's maybe it's not as appropriate, you're talking about something that happened to you and it's just for a moment. So Steve, that's how I've always been able to handle it.
We'll get to Tommy very soon, and I bore the people with my faith because I don't have new stuff. It's the same question because it's my favorite. When have you felt closest to God?
In times of stress, in situations I could not control or handle. We all reach out then, but I want to be a Christian that reaches out every day in thanking him for sending Jesus and for Jesus coming and dying on the cross for us, but more importantly, then rising up for us. So I try to be there every day, Homer, and take that moment each morning to pray. And then we do our Bible readings at night in bed when we go to bed. But I think everybody would feel closest when they're in need. Some feel like, well, where are you? Well, you know, he doesn't always answer us the way we want to be answered. Sometimes there's silence, but it comes in a different manner. So I would say that's how it affects me, Homer.
All right, Tommy, You may not know this, but that's what his childhood friend called him. So I love calling him Tommy.
You know what I call him, Homer? You know who he is to me? He's Black Bart to me. And I'll let him tell you why.
All right.
He said you could grow a beard in about 5 minutes. So that was our fun together back in the day. And I still smile and tell people, but Mac, a lot of folks don't know Black Bart these days. But
No, I know, but Tom and I did Bucks games together on Total TV way back before cable television had really hit. And Jim Fitzgerald, the owner of the Bucks, owned Total TV. So Pip and I did games together.
Yeah. And back then, Mac, I think that's when the privilege was a gift to me because I got to know you better and you have lived your faith. You continue to live your faith. There's a song, Homer will know it, I'm sure, but it's Weary Traveler. It's played on the Christian 105.7 FM or K-Love. And I often think that we're weary travelers at times when we live for ourselves. Could you talk about the difference, particularly after you came to Christ, of living for yourself, as we all tend to do as fallen creatures, and then living for the Lord and what a difference it made for you?
Well, first of all, and I've told people when I speak many times, and you guys know this, being a Christian doesn't make life easier. It makes it better because you know where you're headed. It doesn't make it easier because your yardstick is Jesus, and that's perfect. Well, I'm not perfect. Every day I have thoughts I shouldn't have. I've done things I shouldn't, and I immediately repent and try to be better. I would love to live holy for the Lord, and I think as human beings, that's really hard for us, Tom, and we fail because of what the yardstick is. And what's wonderful about that is you can go to the foot of the cross in your prayer and you can be forgiven if you're sincere and you're really trying to overcome that sin. And that gives me great comfort because I feel I have sinned greatly. And therefore my forgiveness is great. And therefore I'm called to forgive people in my life that perhaps that I've had issues with and issues with me. And we're called to forgive as Christ has forgiven. And so I just try to keep all of that in front of me every day, Tom. I'm sure you guys do too. I think most Christians do. And I think even as a Christian, we still live for ourselves too much. It seems to me human nature that you're always trying to accomplish or make a decision or achieve something for your desires and your family's needs and desires. And I think you've got to work at keeping the Lord in there and in front of that so that you can keep balanced as to it's not about you. In my profession, my sport as a player, from the time I was in the 7th grade, I was a good player, but it was always about achieving and being good, winning games, winning this, winning that, winning all-stars, and you're very selfish. And maybe to some degree you need to be, but when you find Jesus, you know what he's given you and why, then you got to try to keep him in front of that rather than yourself.
Mm. And you speak so well to the point of we try to control things and then we realize that we don't have control, that every breath is a gift from God, right?
Breathing, that's where people of faith and certainly people without faith, they don't even stop and think about it, what we're given. And the world's a mess today, and look what's happening, and the concerns with all of that, and the fact that we can do nothing. And breathing right now is from him. And I don't know how people that don't have faith function. I guess it can be just about you and what you want that day and every day. Whereas a person of faith, it can't be that way.
There are many out there within the sound of your voice who might be saying, I'm just not good enough, or I can't do this. And we're still trying to achieve. I follow that all the time, Jon, where I say, yeah, but it isn't about you. It's about the Lord. And as you said so well, and what we want to emphasize, keep your eyes on Jesus, keep your eyes on the cross. So what would your words be to that person who's trying, like maybe trying too hard, instead of letting go?
Pip, I was called on a lot of years to go and speak and now I even feel more unworthy now because of failure. And like doing this, I feel unworthy. But remember this, who did Jesus seek out? I mean, he would go seek out the lowly, the sinner, of which we all are. That's who he brought in. Thank God he sent Jesus, and that they've opened that door for us, everybody, to be worthy to fall down in front of him. Everybody's worthy and everybody can be forgiven. And that's what I would hope people would understand. It's open to all.
You speak so passionately. It's evident to me, especially today, in listening to you, that you have fallen in love with Jesus. Did that happen overnight, or was it a process?
I think it was both. I always was, before I hit the hotel room in 79 in Portland. I mean, I knew Jesus, I was baptized, all of that, but we never went to church. I was never guided that way. It just didn't happen in my family. So there wasn't a lot of opportunity to be brought along as a young boy. But I always had him there, but I never tried to walk with him every day until what happened to me did. And I think I always had an appreciation, but I think as you pray, as you read the word, as you talk to other believers, I think that love of Christ grows every day. And I had a good friend who was a pastor say to me, you go into the Bible like this. I'll put my hands up like this, and you can read it every day for 50 years, and it just keeps going like this. It just keeps opening up to you. Like I told you that story about keep your eyes on Jesus. I'd read that passage at least 14 times. And the 14th time it spoke to me in a different manner. So I think the love of what Christ has done for us. I lost my brother a year ago this May. He was 83 years old, and lost him, and he was a strong Christian. And at his funeral during COVID, with mask on and outside, the pastor said, my brother's name was Jewett, Jewett. Said Jewett took a hold of Jesus and never let him go, and Jesus never let him go. And that has so resonated with me as well. It's every day.
How often do you look back, Jon, this is powerful. I hadn't known this, that the Lord just kept coming after you. The woman with the groceries, and then the bellhop, and the TV show before that. Doesn't it blow your mind how much he loves you? Leaving the 99 to come for the one. I think we could all relate to that on a certain level.
I'm sure you guys feel this way too, and everyone watching. Every day, when I pray at day and at night, I'm almost overwhelmed that how amazing it is that God died for me, you, all of us. Think about that. He died for us. I mean, we're so unworthy down here. And he died for us, and God gave us a plan to be in eternity. And my brothers there were my mom and dad and my father-in-law and all of our friends before that I pray for. They're in heaven. My brother couldn't walk. He was in pain, and now he's floating. He's in heaven. what a gift. It's, if you stop and think, we should all lay flat on our stomachs every day and praise and say thank you.
Mm-hmm. I know Homer has some more for you, but I want to just ask about Midwest Athletes Against Childhood Cancer. You and your good friend, former broadcast partner, Eddie Doucette, lives saved over decades, especially looking at it from the love and trying to honor the Lord and doing it for him. How gratifying is that to know that, you know, you've been put in a position, given many gifts, and you have answered the call, Jon?
I've often thought, oh, almost daily, how did I get from a dirt basketball court in my backyard and the hoop up in the garage prior to that, in a little town in Indiana, to the NBA through college at Indiana, when there were only 9 NBA teams. There were 10 players on a team, 90 pro players in the world, in the era of the Boston Celtics and the Russell teams, and Jerry West and Elgin Baylor and Oscar. And in that era of greatness, how did I get from that dirt court to an NBA championship, all-star, all the wonderful accolades? Well, I got there because I believe that was God's path for me, because I believe part of that, then a big part of that, was to start and grow and be involved in every day the MAACC Fund, because it saves kids' lives. I believe that. It's too successful not to have been blessed by God. We've now given over $80 million to childhood cancer research. And as you guys know, back when we started this in '76, only 20% of the children survived with any form of cancer. Today, that's over 80. And yes, there are still many problems from it, from the chemos, from the things they do, but they've continued to improve because of research. That 100% is God-driven. Is the MAACC Fund a Christian organization? Not officially, but if you look at the people, it is. The people it brought to me to when we started it with Eddie and I, and then Eddie left, went to California, and we continued on to grow it. But the people with the bucks, the people with the MAACC Fund, Christ brought me John Kerry for all those years, and now Becky Pinter and people that are on the staff and people on the board. Do we have problems? Sure. Do we have to deal with them? Sure. But I believe that's how I got from the dirt court to the NBA for this purpose, which also shines a light on Jesus.
Homer?
I do want to know about his brother and their faith journeys, the same or different, or how they evolved. But my first thought and question is, you know, there are people that don't know you were a player. All they know you from is the MAACC Fund. I wonder what crosses your mind, or I just think the joy or what emotion that must create for you.
Well, thank you. It's incredible. When I'm stopped, I mentioned every day I'm stopped. Many people, the younger ones, only know me as the former Bucks announcer, because they, the younger people, the older ones will come up and go, "Hey, Jon, I saw the first Bucks game. I saw you. I had a guy tell me I was at the airport today. You guys came back and won the championship." I get stories like that all the time. And then often someone will come up and go, point their finger at me, MAACC Fund. I go, "You couldn't have said a better thing to me. MAACC Fund." I've had cancer parents of kids with cancer come up and almost attack me. I had a young woman I was in a line one day for some food, grabbed me from behind. I turned around in a defensive position. I turned around she probably was 30. All right, guys, this is where I struggle. Tears running down her cheeks, thanking me for the MAACC Fund because her daughter had leukemia and survived. I had a young man, when I came out of a TV station one day doing an interview, stop his car in the middle of the street in a busy area with cars lined up behind him honking, jumped out of his car, ran over to me, grabbed me, hugged me, and said, my brother is in Children's Hospital right over there, because I was near there, and said, I want to thank you for the MAACC Fund. And he got back in his car and took off. I've got multiple stories like that, guys. And Homer, I'm telling you, not only does it excite me, not only do I appreciate it, but it recharges me to get out there and do more and push more so that we can raise more money and give it to research at these great facilities we support. And I thought about this. We're saving kids' lives through the MAACC Fund, but more importantly is saving their souls. And oftentimes I can bring that up when I speak, but oftentimes it's not appropriate. But the lives are important, but their souls are even more important.
I'm not adding to that. You want to add to that and finish something else, Tommy? That's up to you. That's what I call a finish.
Part 2 will be about his brother and the faith and what have you. Well, John, it'd be a pleasure to. Homer's right. We have to know when to say when. Is there any tidbit you'd like to leave with anyone out there as it relates to faith and coming to faith?
Well, you know, it's something that I hope people will think about. And if they see this, and the three of us, and where you guys are with your faith, obviously committed. I love the words, and I always use them in motivational talks, but I applied them to my life. When I was a young boy, I had a 3x5 card, and it was on the wall in my bedroom, you know, about the impossible. How is that? The difficult I will accomplish now. The impossible may take a little while. And people ask if I had, you know, idols. I didn't. In that era, you didn't have all this media. But you know who my idol probably was earlier, if there was one? It was the Reverend Bob Richards. Do either one of you know who he is? Because you both are astute in terms of athletics. I think he was the first Olympic athlete on Sports Illustrated front page, and he won the pole vault back in the early 50s. I don't even know when. I heard him speak, and I heard him speak about athletics, motivation, commitment, and faith. And I've always lived by the motivation and commitment of life. And that took me through athletics. It took me from that dirt court. I followed that mantra my whole life. Those were important, and they apply to your faith. So if people will consider this, and just remember, accepting Jesus is for eternity, because this life's brief, and we'll be in heaven then with Jesus.
Jon McGlocklin, we can't thank you enough. I would say, again, all the basketball success, Mr. Buck and what have you, but it's the Christian Johnny Mack. And Lord willing, after many more years of love and service, you will see Jesus face to face. That's for certain. And he will say, well done, good and faithful servant. You're a treasure. We love you. We thank you for this time on My Faith with Homer and Pip.
Think the world of you guys. God bless.
Thank you so much. For our producer, Brent Young, who makes it all possible, and Steve the Homer True, I am Tommy Pippins. We hope and pray that this wonderful share by this incredible man of God will help us all as we stride forward to and through the cross together in Christ. God bless you, everybody. Until next time.